Welcome to another edition of the Debbie Delight, brought to you by ExpandTheBoxScore.com. I am your host, Ricky Valera. On today's episode, we're going to continue on with our player profiles. Last week, we started in the SEC with the quarterback position. Obviously, we'll follow suit today with the running back position. I'm rather excited to talk about the guy that I got via the Twitter poll. As always, I am joined by my partner here, Stoops. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to hear what you have to say and dive into the guy that I'm going to talk about as well. So we're in the middle of another Devy auction right now. So a lot of these guys, actually both of these guys are on the board already, right? Or yeah, both of them are on the board. So that'll be fun. See kind of what prices they go for. But no, definitely excited to continue diving into the SEC and the running back position specifically.
Yeah, there's some interesting talent at this position. We talked a little bit last week. I think we talked about it off air, maybe not on air, but the SEC quarterbacks this year is probably the most lackluster it has been in a long time, right? Mm-hmm. Even at the top, if you think about it, if you take the mix of Newman, Trask, Mond, that's really your top three on most people's boards, right? But even if you toss in Mac Jones a little bit there, even if you toss in Bo Nix, some of these other guys, it's not very top heavy at all. Like the thing about it is Newman still kind of unproven. Mon has really underwhelmed, and Trask is coming off a strong second half of a season. But none of these guys are sitting there like a Tua. You know what I mean? Like none of the, Costello's obviously in the conversation, but what Costello are we going to get? Are we going to get an injury-prone Costello? Like there's so many questions regarding different things and different aspects. But the running back position, it's rather loaded. I like that chart that you posted. Did you still have that up? It was amazing to see kind of what you have put together wise whenever it comes to the SEC running backs as a collective whole. And some of the numbers were rather insane once you combine them together. I mean, obviously, if you go right off the top, you have Najee Harris. You know what I mean? One guy that we've covered several times on this podcast, but give me some of those details that you tweeted out there.
So you're talking about the scrimmage or the total yards one? Yeah. So Pilon Hill, number one, basically in total yards, which I actually, so again, during the season, I'm not necessarily dissecting it, diving that in depth to really see who's ranked in. I just kind of look at what their raw numbers are. So I was kind of surprised to see that he was number one in total yards because he did it very quietly, to be honest with you. Najee Harris, number two in total yards. Rakim Boyd, number three. And these are returning guys. So these are obviously like Clyde's not in there. Like these are guys that are coming back this year. So Rakim was number three. Isaiah Spiller, number four. And then AJ Rose on the site and other places. I guess it's a sim. I'm not sure how you say, but Twitter, he has AJ Rose from Kentucky. He was number five. So he's one that I watched a little bit of film on him because I hadn't really dive too in depth on him, and he's a little sneaky guy that could definitely in a deep Devy league could fly under the radar. So definitely check out AJ Rose from Kentucky. But yeah, those were the top five in total yards, and that's just one thing, and kind of to go on a small tangent, like you've kind of done your QB, profile, the Valero verdict, stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to work on some graphics and just kind of put out basic stats, right, that are easy for people to see. And those the top four names, those are guys everyone's been talking about in some fashion. But with AJ Rose, like, okay, if you're in Kentucky, if you're a fan, like you're probably talking about him, but outside of that, you're not going to hear much about him. So it's just cool stuff like that. It's a quick, easy look like, Pilon Hill, jot that down. And you know what I mean? So yeah. I've put out some other stuff as well. More stuff will be coming out too, but now it's just a lot of fun to put stuff like that. And I've obviously been loving the graphics aspect, just kind of diving deeper. But yeah, it was just fun to look at the top five in total yards. And I put out another one for NCAA with red zone targets for receivers, red zone rushes for running backs, like in their touchdowns. And, it was interesting to see the receiver from North Texas. He had, I think it was 19 red zone targets at 9 touchdowns. He's 5'9", so
Darden.
Yeah. It's just a lot of fun to put stuff out like that.
And I know this is kind of getting off topic as well. Obviously, we're talking about the running back position. But for me personally, I've starting to realize that you don't have to be 6'5" anymore to be a red zone threat, right? Maybe it doesn't translate as much. I would like to see what the transition into the NFL would be. Whatever I'm trying to say, I would like to see what that is converted to the NFL. Maybe it's just a small receiver, red zone type thing in the college aspect of things. But it is interesting. Like I pulled that up for like top 5 running back red zone rushing attempts. You had tweeted out Najee Harris had the 54 in the red zone, which kind of just really blew my mind. That's a lot of touches, but that was 5th, right? That was 5th. You know what I mean? Chuba Abbey had 56. But Jarrett Patterson was number 1 with 76 red zone rushes, and he converted that to 15 touchdowns. Stuff like that kind of blows my mind to see that they were in the red zone that much to get 76. He had 20 more than Najee Harris. You know what I'm saying? So stuff like that is some stuff that Stoops is cooking up. I've loved it. He's helped me out with some of my stuff for the coast to coast scouting, and the graphics are insane. Like what you're doing and how fast you're doing it now is really, really awesome. So head on over to Stoops' Twitter and check it out. I mean, that's Stoops 1990. He's pumping up some good stuff, and I'm really enjoying it. Enough talking about Stoops and how great he is, and let's talk about these running backs. For me this week, I'm going to talk about Pilon Hill. He won the Twitter poll that we put out there. It was him, Eric Gray, and Jaron Ely out of Ole Miss, and Hill won with 53% of the votes. But before I take some talk about Hill, who are you going to talk about, sir?
I am going to talk about Mr. Rakim Boyd out of Arkansas currently. He was an original commit to A&M. Obviously, I was very pumped about that. But academic reasons, obviously, they did not go in depth per se. But he then transferred to Independence Community College, where he became much more famous through the, Last Chance U on Netflix. Definitely, he absolutely dominated his season there. He had at Independence. In that season, he had 1,211 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. Now, obviously, community college, right? Whenever you're a top talent, you're going to stand out above the rest. But in that conference or the game that the colleges that they play, like that's the one, right? That's where the top community college football programs are. So he was playing against other guys who did go D1, right? So to still put up those types of numbers at a community college is pretty phenomenal. That was in 10 games. Then he went to Arkansas, right? So he came back into the SEC. So he definitely continued his production there, albeit not quite at a level that he did at the community college. But he's still, man, I love Rakim Boyd. I think he's an absolute phenomenal talent. I don't think he's talked about enough. He's a very physical runner. He's got some good speed. He's able to catch the ball. It's just Arkansas has never, well, I say never, not in a while, right? I know whenever, what was it, Felix Jones? And McFadden, whenever they would dump it off to the running backs a little bit more, but it just kind of seems obviously coaching changes, change things like that. But overall, he's definitely able to do it in the passing game. So love seeing that. But whenever you look at the red zone production, we just talked about it, right? He honestly, in 2019, they didn't use him too much inside the red zone. And again, I did not go in depth to say, well, did they have 80 plays in the red zone, that's why, or was it just they go a different direction? I'll be honest, I didn't go that in depth with it, but he had 11 rush attempts, 40 yards, but he had 3 touchdowns on those 11 rushing attempts. So it's definitely something I like to see. He converted on that. Only had 2 targets, did have 1 reception for 3 yards. So a little bit light there, but again, he's not used as heavily in the passing game. So I'd love to see production come out of that this season. New head coach coming in, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I don't want to say it's interesting stuff, but kind of interesting stuff. So we'll get into that later. But whenever you look at his touches by yards, he did have 18 plays that went for negative yards. That's one of the higher numbers that I have seen. Albeit the offensive line there did have some issues. It's one of those where it doesn't help the running back. It doesn't help the quarterback. It just kind of, I don't want to say ruins the rhythm of the offense, but essentially it can definitely push things back. So big thing though, 0 to 3 yards. He had 77 touches. That was 37.9% of his total touches that went for 0 to 3, which doesn't sound like a lot, but at the same time, it's like if you can get those 3 yards, it at least shortens that second down mark or third down mark, makes it a little bit more manageable. So it's something you like to see there, but obviously bigger yards obviously are what you want to see, but 2. He had 54 touches go for 8 yards or more. That's 26.6 of his touches. So that's definitely a number I love seeing there. 10 plays went for 21 yards or more. That was only 4.9. So he's definitely not a big play threat per se, but he's able to do it. If you watch some of his film, he does have those big plays and he's able to make people miss. And like I said, he's not afraid of contact, right? He's going to run into you. He's going to run you over. Very physical back. I love seeing that. So looking at his stats from last season, he did have some big games. And I looked at it in the sense of Arkansas' schedule wasn't very heavy on the top talent. Obviously, once you get into the SEC, they did start playing some top talent, but outside of that, little bit on the lighter side. But I'm actually going to jump back to 2018 real quick. When they played Alabama, he had a phenomenal game. 15 rush attempts for 102 yards, no rushing touchdown, but he had 5 targets and he caught all 5 passes for 26 yards. Against Ole Miss that same year, 7 rush attempts for 109 yards. And a rushing touchdown, 2 targets, caught both those passes for 36 yards as well. So move to 2019 against Kentucky, right? 15 rush attempts again, 134 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, had 1 target, didn't catch it though. Against Western Kentucky, again, lower talent, but 8 rush attempts, 185 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 target, didn't catch it. But again, so against top talent, right? He put up some numbers. They gave him the ball at a decent amount. Obviously, it wasn't anything of an overload or anything, but I'd love to see him get the ball a little bit more than 15 times, and let's see what he can do with it, which I think is something that we will see this season. I think he'll see more touches on the ground given the coaching change, so I'm excited to see that. But the fact that even against Western Kentucky, who, again, is not necessarily an SEC caliber program, but to only have 8 attempts and go for 185 yards, that's phenomenal. That's what you want to see, right? We always say that with quarterbacks, receivers, running. It doesn't matter what position. When you play lesser competition, we want to see you perform on that type of level. So the fact that he did it just speaks volumes to me. We kind of touched base on it before we started, or we were recording, I'm sorry, before we started diving into this. As far as like the 2019 SEC running back leaders, 3 of the top 7 are now in the NFL. That's Clyde, DeAndre Swift, and Keyshawn Vaughn. So they're gone. So Pilon Hill, number 1, Najee, number 2. We already said that. Rakim Boyd, though, number 3 last year in total yards. He had 1,293 total yards, 19 receptions, 160 receiving yards, 184 rush attempts for 1,133 rushing yards, and 8 touchdowns. So those are numbers I would love to see increase this year, and I think it can. And reason I say that, so Sam Pittman, new head coach, right, coming into Arkansas. He's been around for quite a while. He got his first outside of like high school or anything, but he got his first coaching stint. It was actually at Hutchinson Community College in 1991. So he's definitely been in the coaching game for a while. And the phenomenal thing that I found out, he has been an offensive line coach everywhere he's gone, right? He has had a part of that offensive line everywhere. That's, I mean, imagine 1991 to now. That's a lot of experience on the offensive line, and you learn things every single year. So I am very excited to see what he can do with that offensive line. Now, again, it's year 1, right? How much can he do? A lot of these recruits aren't his guys. He does have some coming in, obviously, but at the same time, most of them aren't going to be his, especially the previous regime that's already been there. But that being said, he's a coach, right? He's still going to coach these guys up. He's going to teach them what he knows. And I'm excited to see what he does there. So I went a little bit deeper. He was an assistant head coach at 5 different programs. So just real quick, I'm going to jump through these. And these are numbers that I got from the starting running backs. Western Michigan in 1999, 221 rush attempts for just over 1,100 yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, 21 receptions, 145 yards. Definitely something I like to see there. A lot of rush attempts, which is why I think this year he's gonna really see a jump in that. Northern Illinois, 2003, 310 rush attempps, over 1,600 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns rushing, 230 receiving yards as well for that running back. North Carolina, take a little bit of dip there, 2007, 95 rush attempts, 399, but there was a split there. There was another running back. I think he had 90 rush attempts for about 300 yards. So if you combine that together, that's what, 180 some odd, 185 rush attempts. You go to Arkansas, 2013. 190 rushing attempts from the starter, 1,000 plus rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. And even the second string guy, 150 rush attempts for 900 yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. Then you move to Georgia, This is where he really, really, really started to make a big time name for himself. He was an assistant head coach there in 2016 and obviously the offensive line coach. This is when he had Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. So Nick Chubb, 224 rush attempts, 1,130 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns. Sony Michel, 152 rush attempts, 840 rushing yards for 4 rushing touchdowns. I say all of those numbers to kind of feed off of what he's already done. Rakim Boyd's already done. So 2018, he had 123 rush attempts, and last year, 184. I'd be shocked if he doesn't top 200 rush attempts this season. I think he's going to be closer to 210, 220 range, potentially more, but I definitely would be shocked if he's not over 200 rush attempts this season. So I think the yards are going to increase on the ground. I think he's going to see more rush attempts, probably even go into the double digits. And I just hope to see more of the pass catching ability, because it's just going to, I don't want to say it's going to guarantee him on the field at the next level, because there's a lot more that goes into it than just that. But I think it helps create that mindset that he can do it. And I know he can, but if the numbers aren't there, a lot of people are going to be like, well, can he do it on a consistent basis type thing. The concern that I see, though, is with Felipe Franks at quarterback there. And reason I say that is because of the pass catching game. When you look at the running backs that Felipe Franks has had, they've been phenomenal talents. But when you look at it, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 or 6 that I've got listed here, running backs that were under him, 13 targets, 6 targets, 3 targets, 0 targets, 0 targets. He doesn't seem to target the running backs out of the backfield too terribly much. Now, again, coaching schemes, playing style, right? It may not fit necessarily when you look into that. So I hope that, Felipe Franks can work on that. And I hope that they do bring that into the offense here. But I think Rakim Boyd's, set up for a phenomenal season. He's already got 2 years, technically 3 if you want to call it A&M, but he didn't really do much there at all. So 2 years in the SEC, going into his 3rd. I think this is going to be his year. I think he's going to really prove what he can do. Like I said, over 200 rush attempts, probably closer to 210 plus, potentially even, 1,300 rushing yards, double-digit touchdowns. Hopefully we see an increase in passing game. But I think with Sam Pittman coming in, I think the offensive line is going to see a big boost, and I think that's going to be phenomenal for him and the team as a whole, right? They've got other guys on the field that can definitely get it done, but I would expect, some big things from Rakim Boyd this season, just kind of continue to build on what he's done previously. Had a long road, right? Whenever you go to community college, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of a bump in the road, but it's also a definitely humbling experience in a sense, because you're given that chance, right? You're given, again, last chance right? You're given that opportunity to prove yourself, your worth, get things straight, grades-wise, whatever it is. And he did that, and he's continued to do it. So definitely excited to see what Rakim Boyd is going to do this year in the SEC.
I think the funny thing about this is the transition into my guy is similar to the stature of, well, first off, obviously it's Pilon Hill out of Mississippi State. But my guy, the way I'm going to talk about him is almost identical to the way you talked about him, but mine's going to be on the verbiage of pass catching. You know what I mean? Both have new head coaches. Both have something to prove this year. And a lot of the stats I took were based off of some of Mike Leach's previous pass running backs as a collective whole, right? Mm-hmm. So Pilon Hill, 5'11", 215, 4-star recruit, 14th ranked running back in his class. So end of last year, he declared for the NFL draft. He initially did. And then he changed his mind. And then, of course, he went back. Now, I think one of the key reasons why he came back is there was a lot of talent that were still up in the air of whether or not they were going to come back or not, right? So for me personally, it was not a bad thing for him to come back or anything like that. So for me personally, I like his decision to come back because, look, he came back to Mike Leach's offense, which is a high potent offense. Okay. 2019, Borhe, 86 catches. Okay. This is just the top running back, just the lead running back. There's other running backs had 20, 30 catches on the team. Okay. James Williams, 2018, 83 catches. And I do believe Borhe had like 40 or 50 as well that year. 2017, James Williams, 71 catches. You're starting to see a theme, right? Okay, Pilon Hill, they will tell you maybe this guy can't catch the ball out of the backfield. Maybe this is what, you know what I mean? They will say that. But I promise you, even with only his 44 catches in his career, he is capable of catching the ball. He is a 3-down back, and I truly believe that he can transition himself into being an easy slam dunk top 3 running back in this class with a big year. This offense is going to be potent. Okay, he shows the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, but he also can line up wide. He is, for a guy that's 5'11", he does not play for 5'11". He does not. He's a big, strong back. 215, I would say he's maybe close to 220, 225 at some point because the guy just tramples over. He's like a pinball. You know what I mean? He comes out of the backfield, he's a pinball. Another thing that's interesting, you were talking about how Rakim Boyd had these negative plays, right? So I'm listening to you, and I'm like, man, you were like, that is a lot. And then I look at my stats, I'm like, Pilon Hill had 25 plays for negative yards last year. 25. Okay. But I'm going to make it even worse. Okay. He had 151 plays for 0 to 3 yards. Okay. So 48% of his touches last year went for 3 or less yards, which is insane. First off, let me explain something to you. That's what a bell cow back does, right? You're not going to get a consistent 8, 9, 10 yards every single time you touch the ball. These guys are also playing in the SEC. You know what I mean? They're playing next level talent. We all know what the SEC does and has in the NCAA. Yes, there's talent elsewhere. I'm not saying that. But when the competition is heavy, they're playing each other. It is very hard. Right. But I will say this, 25% of his touches last year went for 8+ yards. Okay. So he has the capability of breaking out. So there's one of the things I was reading an article when you start watching him play and you read, there was questions around his size and when he can be a bell cow, right? So let me just go ahead and throw that out the window as well. 242 touches last year, 1,350 yards and 10 touchdowns, averaged 5.6 yards a carry. Averaging 5.6 yards a carry with 48% of your rushes going for less than 3 yards showcases to me and hopefully to you guys how good of a back he really can be, right? That means 52% obviously went for more than 3 yards, but he's still averaging 5.6 yards a clip on 242 carries is really hard, yes. All right, so eight games over 100 yards, even 2-3 touchdown games. He sees the field well. I like his vision. So there's a few plays when you're watching him, you kind of get mad, right? He runs right into a gaping, just a clan of guys. But then out of nowhere, you see Pilon Hill take off for 10 yards. And you're like, how? Why? This is not a running back you're going to arm tackle, right? You would swear the way that Pilon Hill runs the football is you're watching Najee Harris sometimes. You know what I mean? That's how impressive it is to me to watch him run the football because he is bouncing off guys. He's taking him 10, 15 yards down the play. He made a couple. I watched this one play before I came on. I think this was 2018 I think it was against Alabama as well. He made the Alabama guys just look stupid. They went to tackle him, and I'm telling you, there is 3 Alabama guys getting ready to tackle this guy. He bounces it outside, runs for another 15, 20 yards. But the big thing for me is this. He's got the ability. He will grind for the additional yards, which is something. He's beefy. You know what I mean? He's beefy. I don't know what it was about that word, but I wrote it down, and I was like, you know what? Pilon Hill is beefy. And he's so hard to bring down. I think that he's going to showcase himself. The thing about it is he's probably not going to rush the ball 240 times this year. I doubt he touches the ball. I think I saw Borges stats last year. He had like 175. James Williams the year before that had like 142. It's never been above 200 carries in Mike Leach's offense. We all know Mike Leach likes to throw the football. You're looking at 650 some attempts last year from Anthony Gordon. This year is going to be the year to focus in and hone in on Hill's pass catching ability, which I think will elevate him to the next level because he's already proven in 2019 he could be the bell cow back. Okay, 44 catches in 3 years is not a lot, right? We talked about that a lot of times, and we're excited. We want to see more 3-down ability. He reminds me of coming back of like a Keyshawn Vaughn. Obviously, Vaughn did not come back into a favorable offense. You know what I mean? He still came back, but what he did was he worked on his pass catching ability, and now look, I think he improved upon his stock, and now, of course, he played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know what I mean? His draft stock went up a little bit because he was able to pass catch, and he's a good pass blocker as well, right? So if Hill can improve upon being a good pass blocker, and then if he can improve upon his catching ability, which I think that he's already showcased he's able to do it, he's going to improve his stock a lot. Okay, to me, it's the trend of the running back position. You have a guy that is 6'3", 6'4", right? and Najee Harris, right? You know what I mean? A monster of a back. But you also have a guy like Pilon Hill who can do some of the same things he can. Obviously, not on the same level, guys. Calm down, okay? But he's a big, beefy back that can hit the holes very hard. I truly think that Pilon Hill has potential to be a good 4 or 5 year starter in the NFL, because that's really all running backs get to do. But the thing about it is he's going to be drafted rather high. And if you're sitting right now with a Boyd and a Hill, if you're sitting inside a Devy draft, or if you're sitting inside a Devy auction, these are 2 running backs that I think are key into targeting, because you're going to get a lot of volume out of these guys in the coming year. I think that with Arkansas and Felipe Franks, he's going to be transitioning into a new offense, right? So he's going to be transitioning from Florida into Arkansas. It's going to be a part question of what he can do. So what are they going to do probably in Arkansas this year? They're going to rely on that run game, right? You know what I mean? And then, of course, this year, Leach is coming in. He's going to rely on his quarterback, who is a very experienced quarterback in KJ Costello, okay? And they're going to get the ball to the running back, because that's what he does. We're going to throw the ball 50 times a game. So you got to dump some targets off to these running backs. And Pilon Hill is phenomenal talent. I love his ability. I think that this core group, and just the SEC, right? Just the SEC, Najee, Boyd, Hill, insane talent amongst just these 3 guys in the SEC. It's going to be exciting to watch a game of one up. You know what I mean? These guys are competing for, obviously you have Etienne, you have Chuba, you have these other guys, but conference-wise, the SEC is a step ahead of the class again this year, but this time in the running back position, Stoops.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, being the A&M fan I am, I'm excited to see what like Isaiah Spiller does.
Spiller, yeah, exactly. Spiller too, yeah.
And he had a phenomenal freshman season, but he didn't even really start to see big time workload until probably week 3 or 4. That's whenever he really started to step into that lead role and be the guy, you know. But even again, as I said, AJ Rose out of Kentucky, he's another guy that I'm gonna definitely want to pay a little bit closer attention to, and I'm guilty of it. I hadn't heard much about him, I hadn't talked much about him, but diving in a little bit bigger or a little bit deeper and seeing those numbers, excited to see that. Lingard right over at Florida now. See what he's able to do in the backfield there.
He's a 5-star prospect.
That's what I'm saying. So
he was a 5-star prospect. So it's definitely going to be intriguing to see kind of what he does in that offense. I think that offense is going to be good. I mean, we're both huge and big on Trask, so it's going to be interesting to watch him in that offense.
Yeah, and then even Jerrion Ely and John Emmer. I mean, the list. I mean, those are younger guys that aren't necessarily going to be draft eligible per se. But
Zamir White. I mean,
it's just the list is going on, right? And then the biggest thing is, and I'm guilty of this, I stopped talking about him, but Trey Sanders out of Alabama, he injured last year. He's the one that came out and basically said that he was predicting a Heisman type season last year, and then unfortunately he went down with the injury. But that type of confidence, right? So him, Najee Harris, and Trey Sanders in that backfield, I think is going to be just going to be scary. Man, like you said, the running back talent, again, some draft eligible, some not draft eligible, but cool thing about Devy is that makes no difference.
Exactly.
You're able to get them. So obviously I am more biased about it than others, and I'm guilty of that, being in the SEC, but I just pay more attention to it. I look a little bit deeper into it. So, and when you look at the NFL draft, the SEC produces talent. You can't overlook that, right? So a lot of talent around the conference, not just at the running back, but it's pretty deep there. Love seeing that, and I'm excited to see. Good news. I think it was June 1st.
Yeah.
That the SEC has said that it's allowing the schools or athletes to come for voluntary workouts.
Yep.
So they don't have to go, but it's a sign, right? It is
AJ
a sign that we're getting back.
Get you in. Get into Mississippi State, please. I need you to prove all these haters wrong. I'm excited. You know what I mean? Because the thing about it is the problem, the downside of a guy like Lingard, a downside of a guy like Franks, a downside of a guy like Costello and Newman, they're coming into new offenses, right? Mm-hmm. This might not work out in their favor, but at the same time, they could use this small time to really hone in on their skills. If they've worked and focused on some of the stuff that they needed to on this offseason, they could really come out here and showcase where some of these other guys might take a step back because they weren't in this. It's going to be interesting to see how some of these offenses are handled with some of the newer talent. You know what I mean? I think this is going to be is not going to be a high year for the freshman talents of the league because they might have the talent, but they don't know that offense yet. You know what I mean? they missed an entire spring practice games. You know what I mean? There's a lot of time being lost right now. June 1st is right on the corner. Football season starts the end of August. You know what I'm saying? Like college football season is not even end August. It's like the second week of August, right? So, you know, it's right around the corner. And I want football. I don't care if there's 1,000 people in the stands. I don't care if there's 100,000. I don't care if there's just Stoops and I in the stands. I don't really care. I just want some football, guys.
Yeah. I think for these freshmen, one of two things is going to happen. We're either going to see kind of across the board, just mediocre seasons, right? Yeah. Or what we're going to see are these talents where it's just their athletic ability is what's carrying them this year. Obviously, you've still got to understand the offense. You've got to have the chemistry. But at the same time, like if a quarterback can give you the receiver the ball on a 5-yard slant, right, and let the athletic ability take over for that receiver,
I agree.
That's where I think we could see it, you know, and there's just a lot of talent. This is just across the board. This is not just SEC, right? There's 5-star, some 4-star, 3-star guys that we're going to find out, you know, that their athletic ability is just going to carry them to where they have a, let's just call it, if they would have had a 700-yard receiving season, you know, with a full prep or whatever, maybe their athletic ability takes them now to 850. I don't know. Those are just numbers I'm throwing out, but I think we're going to see the athletic ability of a lot of these top guys, even some of those, you know, 4-star, 3-star guys that are going to carry them up and potentially give them more stats. And you got to think about it too, is obviously this is true for all incoming freshmen, but like the defenses, like they don't have time to prep for these guys' abilities, right? They don't see them even on a practice field because those spring games, right? All these colleges have their spring games, but they're not doing that. So those are times where, you know, the SEC opponents, ACC, Big Ten, whatever, are able to watch those games and at least get a little bit of feel for what these receivers, running backs, quarterbacks are able to do. They don't even have that. So it's kind of like everyone's at least, I guess you could say, on a level playing field with it, right? Now, aside from some of these conferences saying, hey, you can go back and practice if you want kind of thing, and some not saying anything. So there's a little bit of difference there, but it's going to be a very interesting season. And I'm guilty of it too, but I got to temper my expectations, you know, for some of these incoming freshmen that I thought were just going to absolutely dominate it. I think if anything, we're going to see the freshman running backs come in, and I think they're going to have better numbers than what we would have expected as opposed to the receivers. I think that the receivers, tight ends, they'll probably struggle a little bit more because it's such a timing game, you know, but with the running back, it's get the offensive lineman block, running backs find the hole and you go, right?
Exactly.
So it's going to be interesting to see, but I'm just glad that they're taking steps. You know, we're getting there. I'd be shocked if we don't have a season in some fashion. Is it a full season? I don't know that yet, right? But it seems as if we're going to have some form of a season.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I was looking at the opening schedule. Obviously, the 29th is when the season starts, but that September 5th, there's some good games lined up. USC, Alabama, and Texas. You have West Virginia versus Florida State. You know what I mean? Georgia. You know, you've got some big-time games. Ole Miss, Baylor. There's some big-time games that are going to be interesting to kind of watch kind of go down. And then, of course, you have the Monday night game. You got Virginia versus Georgia playing that Monday night game before the NFL season starts. So, you know, there's a lot of big-time games. That USC-Alabama game, whew, talk about a football game right there. I'll tell you what, we're going to really showcase how good my boy is whenever he goes out there and dices up Alabama. But that's a different conversation for a different day, guys. All right, folks, thanks for listening. Again, obviously, thanks for the listeners, consistent, and the love that has been pouring out for our show on Twitter these last, week, 2-3 weeks has been amazing. I am blown away consistently by the kind words of every single person. And deep down, Stoops and I, we literally talk about it off the air a lot. And we send screenshots, right? Oh my God. You know what I mean? It's really cool. And it's just like two guys having a blast talking football, but at the same time, trying to understand and help you understand the game and understand the Devy aspect of the world as well. So make sure to follow Stoops on Twitter at Stoops1990. Give myself a follow at Ricky Valera _. Give the show a follow at the Devy Delight. Head on over to the expandtheboxscore.com. Guys, the in-depth tools for this website are insane. You know what I mean? Well, how else would we have been able to pull out 48% of Pilon Hill's stats of 0 to 3 yards that went for 0 to 3 yards or less? You know what I'm saying? How else would we have been able to do that? And so that's expandtheboxscore.com. Follow them on Twitter at XTBBoxscore. If you want to join us, we're going to have another mock draft on Monday. We've been having a blast. We actually filled up this past week. I actually had 2 people hit me up afterwards, say they tried to join after it was filled up. So folks, we're having a blast with these, but people are joining them. I'm excited about it. It's a lot more fun, obviously, when it's full, especially when we can have the chat going on at the same time and people are talking to us. So thank you so much again for tuning in. And until next time, we'll talk to you guys later.
See y'all later.